Okay, well, the spreadsheet's designed to give me an overview of everything that was tested in the case, what tests were performed, and what the crime lab results were. So it starts on the left-hand side with the first column, which is the lab item number that was assigned to the evidence when it arrived at the crime lab. And then the next column is the description of that item. And this is all taken from the analyst's bench notes. And then if there were any sub-items and what their descriptions were and so forth. And then if they did any body fluid identification, serology, I indicate what tests they used and what the results were. And then this lab also did a little bit of male DNA screening on a few items, and so I have a column for that. And then I go into the regular sampling that they did for DNA. There's a bunch of blank spaces on the spreadsheet because I was unable to obtain the information I needed from the bench notes that were provided to me to fill that in. So I couldn't calculate how much DNA they found. I would normally do that in a case. And then after that is information about the profiles that they got, the DNA profiles they got, and the interpretation of those profiles in the report.
All right.
And then on the very far right-hand side is whether or not there was any DNA that could be reasonably assigned to any of the persons of interest in this case.
All right. So what was let's just start with the first item. What was the first item that you looked at?
So it was lab item 2, and it was a sealed package that contained disposable black gloves that was submitted to the lab for trace evidence, forensic biology, and latent prints. Of course, I only looked at the forensic biology part of this. So the first glove is assigned as 2A, the second one is 2B, the third one is 2C. Then they went into serology. So they actually did test these gloves for the presence of blood. And this laboratory uses 2 different tests for doing that as sort of backup, I guess, to make sure that the results they're getting are correct. This is what we call a screening test, so it doesn't say it's human blood. It doesn't say for sure it's blood, but it's a well-regarded set of screening tools for determining whether a stain might be blood.
Was there blood stains found?
Yeah, so there was blood found on all of the gloves. Those swabs were then, those stains were then swabbed. There was also what they called contact swabbing of the gloves. Of the glove, the first glove and the third glove, there was contact swabbing, which means that usually what that means, and the analyst would have to, explain how they use it in their lab, but usually what that means is that they're avoiding the stained areas and looking for skin cell DNA rather than looking for who's the source of the blood.
Okay. Then what was the next thing you looked at as far as the gloves?
Well, then we looked at the DNA. So they did not continue on with DNA typing with the second glove or the stain on the third glove, but they did do the stain that they found on the first glove and the contact swabbing from that glove, and they also did DNA typing on the contact swabbing from the third glove. And when they did that, they got complex DNA profiles. That means that there was a mixture of DNA, and they felt that the profiles were going to be better analyzed if they went into their True Allele software, and so that's what they did. And when they did that with the first stain, the stain on the first glove, that was a stain, remember, that tested positive for blood. They got a mixture of at least 2 contributors with a major and minor component, and they had a DNA match to the victim, on the major component, and then the minor component was too limited in genetic information for them to do anything with TrueAllele. The contact swabbing was also two contributors with a major and minor component, and again came back to a match to the victim, and the minor component was too limited for comparisons. And then the contact swabbing on the third glove gave the same exact result. So all of the DNA that they obtained on the gloves came back to coming from almost with a very high degree of scientific certainty, coming back to the victim with a contribution, a very low contribution from at least one other person.
Was Mr. Ibarra's DNA found on the gloves?
No, that like I said, the major component came back to the victim, and the minor component was so limited that comparisons couldn't be made. So we have no idea who contributed that minor portion.
So that could be anybody.
Correct.
All right. What was the next item that you evaluated?
Should say it could be anybody but the victim, because it was somebody foreign to the victim.
All right.
Correct.
Fair enough. Actually, just to be clear, because that wasn't a very clear question I asked, and I'm going to clarify. It could be anybody as far as the minor contributor, the contributor of the minor profile. We can't determine who that person is.
Correct. It can't be the victim, though.
Okay.
Because there's two contributors to these profiles. So we know that the victim is the major contributor with a very high degree of scientific certainty. We just don't know who the minor contributor is, but it's not the victim.
Okay. What was the next item that you looked at?
The next item was the blue jacket, which was item 8. And on the blue jacket, they did test a stain. Looked like, I guess, like a blood stain on the jacket. And it was also positive in those 2 screening tests for blood. But they didn't take that one forward for DNA testing, so we don't know whose blood that is. They did do also contact swabbings of the jacket. So again, I'm assuming that this is areas of the jacket that were unstained. So trying to get information about possible skin DNA transfer, for example. And when they did that again, they got a complex profile, which is very common off clothing. You know, the analyst decided that this was best analyzed by TrueAllele, not a manual interpretation that she could have done. And the result of that was at least 3 contributors to this profile. And there was a DNA match via TrueAllele to the defendant as well as to the victim. And the other people of interest that were tested here, Diego Ibarra, and I can't remember the name of the other Ibarra, begins with an A.
Arianis
Ibarra. They were both excluded as contributors to the major component. So basically what this had was it had a major component that had 2 people in it, and then it had a minor component that they couldn't do anything with, they couldn't make any comparisons. But they were able to exclude both of those other 2 individuals as contributors to the major component. So this major component was a mixture of 2 people, including both the victim and the defendant.
Okay.
And I also did look at the DNA electrophoregram for this one and determined that the mixture ratio between the 2 of them was approximately equal, with slightly more DNA coming from the victim, and that was also borne out by the TrueAllele analysis too. So I looked at the electrophoregram to make sure that it looked as if it was being interpreted properly by TrueAllele, and it looked like it was.
All right. Does the minor profile, does it rule out Diego or Arianis?
No.
It does not?
No. It's, again, one of these ones that is too low in information for them to make any comparisons. So they're only ruled out as belonging, having contributed DNA to this major mixture.
Okay. So, and I'm keep mispronouncing his name, but Arianis and Diego cannot be ruled out. Is that correct?
That's correct. Nobody can.
Okay. And can you tell from, so we know that from your review, you see that DNA from Mr. Ibarra and Ms. Riley is present on the jacket. Does that result in and of itself, does that tell you when and how the DNA got there?
No.
Okay. And like for when could have the jacket for Mr. Ibarra, when could that have happened? Do you know? Can we tell?
Well, it's hard for me to tell for two reasons. I mean, one is fundamentally it's very difficult to say that. No, you can't say. I mean, he could have been wearing the jacket months, weeks, days, or at the time of the crime, before it was collected by the police. So in this particular case, it's we don't know when it got shed on there. The same thing for the victim's DNA. It could be possibly that when the analyst swabbed this, she was actually picking up some of the victim's blood without realizing it, like tiny spatters or something that she didn't see visually. So maybe that's the source of the blood.
At this point,
There's an objection, Dr. Ballard.
objection, speculation.
Judge, she's testifying as an expert, giving her opinion based on what she reviewed.
Allow it. You may continue.
Okay. Or it could be she wore the jacket at some time. It could be that she grabbed the jacket. There's really no way of knowing how her DNA got there. No. I also don't know exactly where the jacket was swabbed. That wasn't clear in the analyst's bench notes. Whether she swabbed the entire jacket with a swab and kind of tried to pick up as much contact DNA as she could, or if she swabbed, say, the inside collar or something like that.
Okay. Is there any other findings that you, or opinions you have based on the findings as it pertains to the jacket?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Let me ask you,